So what is neuro-linguistic programming and how does it work? Is it a cult, a religion, some kind of creepy form of mind control, or is it just all made up self-help bullshit? Well, that's what we're going to be exploring in this video. Hi, I'm Stephen Burns from Mind School, and in this video I want to talk about NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming, what it is and how it works. So let's get started. What is NLP? Well, before we even get there, I just want to say that there are a lot of rather weird and bizarre portrayals of NLP out there. I've personally been doing NLP now for 22 years as a therapist, a coach, a trainer, but also practicing it for my own mental health, my own well-being. And I've noticed over the years that there are a number of really twisted views, ways of presenting it. One classic way is that NLP is like some form of creepy mind control. So if you want to change someone's behaviour or control it, then you can mesmerise them by copying their physiology or by talking in riddles or subliminally slipping in secret messages into your conversation so that you can bend them to your way of thinking. Another, rather strange way of presenting it is that it's some form of magic potion or a magic pill that you can basically use it to cure absolutely anything in your life in the space of 5 minutes. Want to change your personality? Well, just do this technique and you can practically change your whole entire life, your whole personality overnight. And in my opinion, and from experience, both these portrayals are, pretty inaccurate. Now, here's the thing, even though I've said it's not really either of those two things, when you learn NLP, you will become a lot more influential. It allows you to understand how people think, how they piece together their reality through their subjective experience. So it makes it possible for you to tailor your message in a way that fits with them. So you can actually be a lot more influential. You can influence them and steer them in a particular direction. But that's not the same thing as mind control. Mind control, it's just such a juvenile concept. And to be honest, if you go into any communication with the aim of trying to control someone's mind through your conversations and the things that you're saying, then I would be willing to wager you'll end up being less influential because people will sense it and they'll just think that you're some kind of creepy weirdo, and to be honest, they'll probably be right. So it's not mind control, but it does make it possible for you to be so much more influential because you understand how people think. And also, you can definitely use NLP to create fast, positive change that lasts. One of the things that gave NLP its notoriety or made it very famous in the beginning was a technique called the fast phobia technique. And this is a way of basically neutralising most fears or phobias in around about half an hour. It's an amazing technique. I've used it with clients. I've also used it on myself. Absolutely fantastic. So you can use NLP to create very quick and positive changes in your lives and to help other people to do likewise. However, if you're going into the subject with the idea that you can change any aspect of your personality, any problem that you've ever had in like 5 or 10 minutes with a couple of techniques, then I would suggest that you're probably setting yourself up for disappointment. Sure, some problems, they're easy to solve, you can solve them very, very quickly, but others take a little bit more time. Others are a bit more complex. They have more layers to them. You have to dig a little bit. You have to explore. You have to figure out what's going on. We are quite complex as human beings. Usually once you've figured out what's going on, you can then make a change pretty quickly. But a lot of the time, actually going through that initial exploration can actually take a bit of time. So I would suggest if you're looking to use NLP to basically change every aspect of your life within 5 minutes, then you don't want to look at it in that way. You're missing out on so much of what the tools have to offer. So hopefully that has set the expectations. Let's actually look at what NLP is. So it does, of course, stand for Neuro-Linguistic Programming. And at its heart, it's a body of information about how the human mind works, how we think, feel, and change. And within that body of information, there's a whole range of tools, techniques, and ideas and processes that can be used to create real positive change in your life that actually sticks, that stands the test of time. One of the ways that NLP was sold to me in the beginning was that it's kind of like having your own user manual for your brain. You know, when we're born, we're given this amazing device, our brain. It's just incredibly complex, but we're never actually given a user manual. You know, at school we're taught subjects like maths, physics, English and chemistry, but we're not really taught how to use our mind properly in any kind of comprehensive way. Well, NLP is kind of like having that user manual. So if you encounter problems, you can then kind of open it up and go, okay, what's going on for me? You can understand what's going on, and you can then take yourself through some processes to actually work towards, you know, creating some kind of positive and sustainable change. So that's kind of a very sort of broad look at what NLP is. But just to kind of deepen your understanding, I want to give you a very quick history lesson. Because NLP has been around since the 1970s, and it all started when a university linguistic professor called John Grinder teamed up with a student at the time called Richard Bandler. And at that time, they were really fascinated about how human beings change, why some people seem to be able to change and let go of problems and live healthy and well-functioning lives, whereas other people really struggled. So they wanted to figure out if they could code what it takes to actually create positive changes in our life. So what they did was they embarked on something called a modelling project. So modelling is where you look at someone who does something exquisitely well, and then you figure out how they do that thing. You almost like you code it, you turn it into recipes, and you can then take that coding, take those recipes and use it to teach other people how to do it, or to teach yourself how to do that particular thing. So what they did was they decided to do a modelling project on 3 elite therapists of that time. A relationship therapist called Virginia Satir, the father of Gestalt therapy, Fritz Perl, who was a German psychotherapist, and a really fascinating, interesting guy, a hypnotherapist called Milton H. Erickson from Phoenix, Arizona in the States. And what they did was, from this modelling project, from their explorations into this subject, they developed a whole range of tools, techniques and ideas that can be used to understand human subjective experience, and also how you can actually make some changes to it, change the way that you think, change the way that you feel about life. And these tools, these techniques, these ideas formed the basis of what is now known as NLP. Now, what they also did at the time was they took those explorations and they linked them to some existing theories within the field of psychology, theories of the mind. And they linked it to quite a lot of different theories, but there was 2 main ones that kind of backed up the discoveries that they had made. The first one was based on the work of general semantics founder Alfred Korzybski. And he had this really important idea called the map is not the territory. So this is the idea that we do not respond to reality on a moment-to-moment basis. We respond to our inner perception of reality. That, you know, our brain is subjected to so many pieces of information, millions of pieces of data flood into our brain at the one time. So in order for us to function, we have to sort and filter all of this information down to manageable chunks, into what is referred to as our map or our model of the world. If we didn't do that, we would just go nuts, we wouldn't be able to function. So the result of this is that we don't really respond to reality on a moment-to-moment basis. We respond to our inner perception of reality. And if you can then change your inner perception, you actually change how you approach your life. You change how you think, and you change how you feel. And this piece is the basis of everything that you do in NLP. Any change technique is all based on this idea that you're responding to perception. And if you change your perception, you'll actually change the way that you respond to whatever it is that's going on for you at that given point in time. To give you an example, quite a few years ago I was working with a client who had a phobia of spiders. And when I was sitting down talking to her, I asked her, I said, okay, how does this work for you? And she said, well, it all starts when I'm driving home from work. And I said, oh, okay, tell me more. And she said, well, I know that the spiders are waiting for me. And I said, okay, well, how do you know? It's a very strange thing to say. And she then proceeded to describe this incredible scene that was clearly going on in her imagination. She basically was imagining that all of these spiders were waiting for her on the inside of her house. It was like they were doing some sort of SAS pincer movement, and as soon as she walked into the house, they were all going to rush out of nooks and crannies and basically cover her hair and do all kinds of unspeakable things to her. Now, when you get down to it, she is not responding to the reality of spiders. She lived in Scotland. Spiders are harmless creatures. They're usually very small too, and they spend a lot of time doing nothing. They do not orchestrate, complex SAS pincer movements, and they're not out to get her. They're just kind of hanging about here and there, So she was not responding to the reality of spiders. She was responding to her inner perception. What was going on through her imagination. And this is this crucial idea that NLP is based on, and we kind of borrowed from the work of Alfred Korzybski. You do not respond to reality, you respond to your inner perception of reality. And if you change the way that you perceive reality, you change the way that you respond to it, the way that you think about it, and the way that you feel about it. And any change technique in NLP is basically using that very simple but powerful principle. So that's the first main psychological theory that they linked their discoveries, their explorations to. The second main theory is something called the Tote Model. So it stands for Test, Operate, Test, Exit. And this is taken from the work of Miller, Gallanter and Pribram. If you want to check out their book and lose several hours of your life because it's not the most scintillating read, then by all means do so. It's called Plans and the Structure of Behaviour. It's the kind of their thesis where they outline the Tote Model. But the basic idea is that as a human being, every result that we create is based on some kind of process. Usually the process is subconscious. It's kind of like a program that's working away in the background. So whenever you make a decision, there'll be like a decision-making program that's working away in the background that allows you to make that decision, to do that. If you are learning, for example, right now, you'll be running your learning program. Maybe you're sitting in a certain way, there'll be a thought process that's going on. Perhaps you're linking what I'm talking about to things that you already know, maybe you're asking questions, maybe you're doing something else, but there will be an underlying process. There'll be a program that you're running in the background, and pretty much everything that we do in life, every cognitive task requires us to do one of these Tote programs in the background. In fact, we have multiple Tote programs all working together. And this is also true when it comes to our problems. There's a lot of talk at the moment in mental health where we talk about problems as static entities. So we say things like people suffer from depression or they have anxiety. But really when you get down to it, these are just labels. These are just with conceptualized human experience. They're not really accurate descriptions of what's actually going on with them. So from an NLP perspective, we kind of stay away from those types of psychological labeling, and we look at everything as a process, that when you look beneath the surface, you will be doing your problems. Now, I don't mean by that you wake up in the morning and go, okay, what's the first thing on my to-do list? Okay, let's do anxiety. That's not the way it happens. We don't consciously choose to do them, but they are examples of learned processes. And there will be programs, patterns in the background that you keep on playing that you've learned to do subconsciously that are actually creating the psychological issues, the blocks, the barriers that you may be experiencing. So in NLP, we took this idea, the Tote Model, and we look at everything as a process. The things you do well, your problems, the decisions you make, learning, memory, planning, you name it. Everything we do that has some sort of cognitive basis is based on some sort of pattern, some sort of process or program that's working away in the background. And if you can understand your programs, if you can understand the recipes that you use to get the results that you get in life, then you can actually make changes to them. You can maybe exchange it for another program or another recipe and start to get a different set of results. So those are the two main theories that Bandler and Grinder linked their discoveries, their explorations to. There are a few more, but to be honest, if I was to talk about them, I'd be here for about 2.5 hours. So from there, NLP of course developed and evolved over time, and it's now turned into a multi-purpose tool that can be used to enhance practically every area of your life. It can be used to enhance your relationships, it's used in business, in sales, in communication, in therapy, in coaching, in teaching and training. You name it, NLP has found its way into pretty much every discipline at some level. So hopefully you enjoyed this quick introduction to NLP. It is a subject I could talk about for hours. We can go so deep on this. So if you want to know a bit more about it, please do let me know in the comments below. So hopefully you enjoyed this brief introduction to NLP and it's deepened your understanding into what it is and how it works. If you enjoyed this video, then please do like, subscribe and ring the notification bell so that you can keep up to date with all future Mind School uploads as they drop. So that's all for me for just now, and I'll see you later on.